Have you ever noticed how strange it feels to wake up in a life that looks complete on the outside, yet feels hollow on the inside? You have what you once wanted: stability, comfort, options, freedom. At least that's what it looks like from the outside. And yet, beneath all of it, there is a quiet, persistent emptiness you can't quite name. Not sadness, not despair, just a flatness. A sense that something essential is missing, even though nothing obvious is wrong. And this is what makes it so disturbing. Because when you lack something concrete, the pain makes sense. But when you have everything you were told would make you feel fulfilled, and you still feel empty, the confusion cuts deeper. You start questioning yourself. You wonder if you are ungrateful, broken, incapable of appreciating what you have. You tell yourself you should be happy, and yet the feeling remains. This emptiness is not accidental. It is not a personal defect. It is the result of a long adaptation process you were never conscious of. Because somewhere along the way, you learned how to survive, how to function, how to succeed in a world that rewards performance over presence. And in doing so, you slowly drifted away from your inner life. You were taught what to want before you ever learned how to listen to yourself. You were taught to chase milestones, achievements, approval, security. And you did what was required. You adapted. You became efficient. You became functional. You became impressive. But adaptation has a cost, and that cost is often paid in meaning. Carl Jung understood that when a person lives too long identified with their persona, the mask they wear to be accepted and rewarded by the world, the soul begins to withdraw. Not dramatically, not violently, but quietly. You continue living. You continue achieving. But something inside you stops participating, and what you experience as emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the absence of yourself. This is why the emptiness feels so strange. You are not lacking stimulation. You are overstimulated. You are not lacking connection. You are surrounded. You are not lacking opportunity. You have more options than ever, and yet nothing touches you deeply anymore. Pleasure feels thin. Distractions feel compulsive. Achievements feel strangely anticlimactic. You reach a goal and immediately feel the need to move on to the next one, not because you are ambitious, but because staying would force you to feel the void underneath. The modern world is very good at numbing this emptiness. It gives you constant noise, constant entertainment, constant validation. It keeps you busy enough to never stop and ask the dangerous question, what am I actually living for? Because emptiness is not dangerous to the system. Awareness is. A person who feels empty but keeps consuming is still predictable. A person who starts asking why they feel empty becomes uncontrollable. So the emptiness is managed, explained away, diagnosed superficially, distracted endlessly, but rarely understood and almost never confronted. Because confronting it would require you to admit something uncomfortable, that much of what you have built your life around does not belong to you. It was chosen for you by culture, by expectations, by fear, by the desire to be safe, admired, accepted. You learn to measure your worth through external confirmation, through productivity, through usefulness, through being someone others could rely on, admire, or envy. And while this brought you success, it slowly disconnected you from your inner signals. You stopped asking what you feel. You started asking what works. And the psyche does not forgive this indefinitely. Jung warned that when the inner life is ignored, it does not disappear. It turns into symptoms: anxiety without cause, restlessness without direction, emptiness without explanation. You can have everything and still feel nothing, because the part of you that gives life its depth has been neglected for too long. This is the beginning of the problem, not the end. The emptiness you feel is not a sign that you need more. It is a sign that you have lost contact with something essential. And until you understand how that happened, you will keep trying to fill a void that was never meant to be filled from the outside. Because the emptiness you feel is not asking to be entertained. It is asking to be understood. And this is where most people make a crucial mistake. They treat emptiness as a problem to be solved rather than a message to be decoded. They try to fill it with more experiences, more purchases, more goals, more relationships, believing that if they just add the right thing, the feeling will disappear. But emptiness does not respond to addition. It deepens with it. What you are feeling is not a lack of stimulation. It is a lack of inner participation. Somewhere along the way, you stopped living from the inside out and began living from the outside in. Your choices became reactions. Your values became adaptations. Your desires became reflections of what was rewarded, praised, and considered successful. And slowly, without realizing it, you outsourced your sense of meaning. This is why having everything feels so strangely hollow. Because much of what you have is the result of compliance, not authenticity. You did what was expected. You followed the path that promised safety and recognition. You learned how to function in the system, and the system rewarded you for it. But the psyche does not measure life in the same currency. It measures it in depth, coherence, and truth. And when these are missing, emptiness emerges. Carl Jung spoke of the danger of living too long in the persona, the socially acceptable identity that allows you to move smoothly through the world. The persona is necessary. But when it becomes the center of your life, something vital is sacrificed. You begin to perform instead of participate, to maintain instead of explore, to manage instead of feel. And the more successful this performance becomes, the harder it is to admit that something essential has been lost. Emptiness often appears at this stage, not as a dramatic collapse, but as a quiet numbness. You go through your days efficiently, competently, perhaps even impressively, yet nothing truly touches you anymore. Joy feels muted. Suffering feels distant. Life feels flat. And this flatness is not peace, it is disconnection. The cruel irony is that the more you succeed externally, the harder it becomes to listen inwardly, because success creates obligations, images to maintain, expectations to fulfill, roles to protect, and questioning any of this feels risky. It threatens the structure you have built, so instead of questioning, you distract yourself. You stay busy, you stay productive, you stay functional, and the emptiness grows quietly in the background. This is why people who have it all often feel the least alive, not because they are ungrateful, but because their inner life has been starved of expression. The psyche cannot thrive on comfort alone. It needs meaning. It needs struggle that is chosen, not imposed. It needs a sense that your life is an expression of who you are, not merely a response to what is expected of you. Emptiness is what happens when you live too far from your center, when your days are filled, but your inner world is silent, when your life is structured, but your soul is unheard, and no amount of external abundance can compensate for this absence. This is also why the emptiness becomes louder when everything else is quiet. Late at night, on weekends, after achievements, in moments when there is nothing left to chase, because without the noise, there is nothing to protect you from the truth that your life, as it is currently lived, may not be aligned with who you are beneath the adaptations. And this realization is frightening, because it raises questions you have learned to avoid. What if the life you built is not the life you would have chosen if you had listened earlier? What if the emptiness is not a temporary phase, but a signal that something fundamental needs to change? What if comfort has replaced vitality? Most people push these questions away. They tell themselves to be patient, to be grateful, to not overthink. But emptiness does not respond to suppression. It responds to honesty. It is not asking you to destroy your life. It is asking you to re-examine it, to look at where you have traded truth for safety, depth for approval, authenticity for acceptance. This is where the real discomfort begins, because emptiness is not neutral. It is confrontational. It forces you to see the cost of your adaptations. It exposes how much of yourself you have postponed in order to belong, to succeed, to be seen as enough. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. But this is also where something important shifts. Because emptiness, when faced directly, stops being a void and starts becoming a threshold. Not a sign that you are broken, but a sign that you are no longer willing to live on the surface alone. Because emptiness, when you finally stop running from it, begins to reveal its true nature. It was never meant to punish you. It was never meant to shame you. It exists because something in you refused to die completely. Something essential stayed alive long enough to signal that the way you have been living is no longer sustainable. The moment you stop trying to fill the emptiness, a different kind of discomfort appears. Not the restless urge to consume, but a quieter unease. The unease of seeing your life clearly, of noticing how much of it is built around maintenance rather than meaning, around repetition rather than growth, around safety rather than truth. This is where most people turn back, because clarity is more frightening than confusion. Confusion allows you to stay where you are. Clarity demands a response. Carl Jung understood that emptiness often appears at the threshold of individuation, when the old structures that once gave life meaning no longer work, but the new ones have not yet emerged. This is not a pathological state, it is a transitional one, a psychological winter. And like all winters, it feels barren from the inside. But it is not empty. It is pregnant with something that has not yet taken form. The problem is that you have been taught to interpret this state as failure, as something to be fixed quickly, as a sign that you need to return to comfort, distraction, productivity. But emptiness is not asking you to go back. It is asking you to go deeper, to descend below the persona you have been living through and reconnect with the parts of yourself that were never allowed to develop. This is why the emptiness feels so personal, so intimate. It is not about what you lack. It is about who you have not been allowed to become. It carries the weight of unlived possibilities, of desires that were postponed, of instincts that were tamed too early. And as long as you keep yourself busy enough not to feel it, this weight remains unconscious, quietly draining your vitality. When you finally allow the emptiness to be there without immediately judging it, something subtle happens. The numbness begins to crack, not into pleasure, but into feeling. Sadness may appear. Anger, regret, longing. This is not regression. This is reconnection. You are feeling again because you are no longer suppressing the signals that were meant to guide you. This stage is lonely because you can no longer fully participate in the life you were living before, but you do not yet know what comes next. The distractions no longer work the same way. The old rewards feel hollow. The roles you once played feel heavy, and the people around you may not understand what is happening. From the outside, nothing is wrong. From the inside, everything is shifting. This is the price of honesty. When you stop lying to yourself about what fulfills you, you lose the comfort of pretending. But what you gain is far more dangerous to the system you adapted to. You gain inner authority, the authority that comes from knowing what no longer works, from refusing to fill your life with substitutes for meaning. Emptiness transforms when you stop treating it as an enemy and start treating it as information. It shows you where your life has become too narrow, too safe, too controlled, too disconnected from your inner truth. And once you see this, the emptiness begins to change shape. It becomes space, not a void, but an opening. In that space, new values can form, not inherited ones, not socially rewarded ones, but values rooted in your actual experience, in what gives you depth rather than status, in what makes you feel alive rather than admired. This does not happen quickly. It cannot be rushed, but it is real. And it is the beginning of a life that no longer feels empty, even when it is quiet. You may lose things along the way, certain ambitions, certain identities, certain relationships that only made sense when you were performing a role. But what replaces them is something more stable, a sense of inner alignment, a feeling that your life is no longer something you are managing from the outside, but something you are inhabiting from within. The emptiness does not disappear completely. It matures. It becomes depth. It becomes silence that is no longer frightening. It becomes solitude that is no longer lonely. And from this place, you no longer need to prove that you have everything, because you are finally in contact with something that cannot be measured, displayed, or taken away. So if you feel empty despite having everything, do not rush to fix it. Do not numb it. Do not explain it away. It may be the first honest signal your inner life has sent you in years, and if you listen to it carefully, without fear, without distraction, it may lead you back to yourself.